Good evening to all of you who have signed on. We'll begin our webinar in a few moments. We have a large attendance and we're just waiting for everyone to sign on. Once again, we will begin our webinar in a few minutes. We're just waiting for others to log on. Good evening. On behalf of OHEL, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. We appreciate the opportunity to collaborate once again with Hidden Sparks to provide an important service to the larger community. I do want to thank UJA Federation for their support of this program. And this program is being recorded and will be available on the OHEL website next week. My name is David Liebtag, and I direct OHEL's Department of School Services, and I will be serving as your moderator this evening. Our department provides clinical services for children 0 to 18, on-site school counseling, and curricular programs in the area of social and emotional development to schools. OHEL's therapeutic treatment centers are located in Brooklyn and Far Rockaway that provide services to children, adolescents, and adults. I have put my contact information in the chat, so please feel free to contact me if we can help in any way. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all the educators, the teachers, the administrators, and support staff for your heroic efforts during the past 18 months and for all you do as you begin to prepare for our children now and in the future. And as a former day school principal, I am keenly aware of the tremendous work that you do to educate all of our children. The title of our webinar is Back to School with COVID Again, a workshop for K-12 educators. And with the COVID school year behind us, and it looks like now a COVID school year ahead, there are many psychological and educational challenges facing teachers and administrators. For many students, the back to school season is an anxious time. How will they navigate their new classes? Will they get along with their teachers? Will they make friends? Adding the layer of COVID only intensifies those feelings. We have brought together two outstanding presenters to guide us through some of these issues, Dr. Norman Blumenthal and Mrs. Ethel Solomon. Dr. Blumenthal is the Zactor Family Chair in Trauma and Crisis Counseling at OHEL and Director of the OHEL Miriam Center for Trauma, Bereavement, and Crisis Response. He has over 20 years of experience in the field of loss and bereavement. He also serves as the Educational Director of the Counseling Training Program for Prospective Clergy at Yeshiva University. Dr. Blumenthal maintains a private practice for children, adolescents, and adults in Long Island. Ethel Solomon is a veteran educator and is presently the newly appointed director of the Hidden Sparks new Parent Education Center in Queens. In her new role, Ethel will be available to provide free virtual counseling sessions and workshops to the parents of Title I eligible students in day schools and yeshivas in Queens. Ethel joins Hidden Sparks after having served as the Director of Special Services in 2 schools in New Jersey, and most recently as the General Studies Principal at the Yeshiva Katana in Manhattan. Each of our distinguished speakers will have 20 minutes to share their insights, and then we will entertain questions after both presenters have completed. We will monitor questions both in the chat and the Q&A tabs on the bottom of your screen. There will also be a short survey after the webinar that will appear after you log off. Please complete it because this will help us better plan for future webinars. So on behalf of our presenters and the entire team at OHEL and Hidden Sparks, I want to wish everyone a Ketiva v'Chatima Tova. And I will turn it over to Dr. Blumenthal.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just pull up my PowerPoint and then we'll, one second, Rabbi Liebtag, I think you have to let me again be the person who can pull up the PowerPoint. Okay, now I'm the co-host. Okay, great. Okay. Give me a second. Okay, slideshow, play from start. Okay. So first of all, again, I want to sort of reiterate what Rabbi Liebtag had mentioned, that we're very honored and part of OHEL to be collaborating again with Hidden Sparks, an organization that we have come to appreciate all the more, and for which we have an undying respect. And everything we've done together has been a tremendous success. I want to express my gratitude to share the podium both with Hidden Sparks and with Ethel Solomon, who will provide us with the more pragmatic teacher perspective as I talk more psychologically. And again, also thank OHEL and David Mendel, Jay Kessman, Lazachter, our Presidium, and Rabbi Liebtag, and the entire staff, the technical staff, and Laura Barr to make it possible for us to do these webinars. So the title is Back to School with COVID Again. So let's go to first slide. I guess it brings to mind the famous line, one of many of Yogi Berra, that it's like deja vu all over again. And I think what's very important here to consider as we venture into the new year is that I think most of us thought we were starting to get out of the woods, that we were starting to emerge from it. We had many reasons to believe that this was petering out, the virus, or reaching a point in which we would have mastery over it, control over it, as we do so many of the other illnesses that maybe COVID would go the way of polio and malaria, and would be diseases that we have conquered. And then, by the way, I see hands are raised, etc. I think questions we submitted through the Q&A, and we'll get to them towards the end of the workshop. We will try to answer questions as best we can, and those who want to contact us can certainly contact us after the seminar as well. But we thought we were out of the woods. We thought we were home free, and then came the Delta variant and possibly other variants. And we have to deal with a few matters. First of all, it's a very unique trauma to go back to something frightening and traumatic after we assumed we have emerged from it. In other words, when it first happened, we kind of grit our teeth and faced it and got through it. And then we could sort of wipe our brow and say, okay, we did it. But then to be put back in it is frightening and I would say unique, and in some respects a more difficult stress. The metaphor that's often used, and I don't know if it's true, but it's certainly what I've heard, is that animals that are raised in captivity, who are let free, if they are recaptured and try to be put back into captivity, they'll just die. They can't tolerate it. It's unbearable. So I think in many respects, it's like that. We can handle a stressor and we have a lot of fortitude. But then to think after we're out of it that we're going to go back into it is very distressing, and a unique distress, and a very different type of stress than the original stressor was. Adding to it is the uncertainty. We don't know what we're facing. where we don't know, is the Delta variant going to hit, let's say, the Northeast as it has other parts of the country? Are we going to achieve some sort of herd immunity through vaccination? Are we not going to achieve that? Are we going to go back to masks and social distancing in the classroom? Only some of these are, it's really, we're dealing, and our students are dealing with a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, and that's what we're going to try to address as well. How do you help children, or which children will be more at risk with this kind of uncertainty? And as I've mentioned many times on these kind of webinars, ambiguity and uncertainty in of itself is a stressor. And even sometimes a certainty that's painful is easier to deal with than an uncertainty. The most common situation that we have faced at the OHEL trauma team is if somebody had, let's say, had surgery to remove a cancerous tumor. The concern was whether the tumor had spread. And there's a 2-week waiting period until the pathology reports come back. And even when the reports come back with bad news, and even reports come back and say that the cancer had spread and there really isn't anything to do anymore, many people describe that as easier than that 2-week waiting period when they didn't know what to expect. The other thing that's important, and this has bearing on if there is a resurgence of the coronavirus, which is what I often refer to as the mathematics of stress. Those of you who've been on webinars with me before, this is a bit of a rerun, and I apologize then. But as I put it often, when it comes to trauma or stress, 2 + 2 isn't 4. 2 + 2 is 8, and 2 + 2 + 2 is 28. Trauma grows exponentially. I almost always quote my mother, may she rest in peace, who was a Holocaust survivor with a treasure trove of Yiddish sayings, and one of them was that when a poor man has a hernia, there's a pimple on it. It's just when something is wrong and something else happens, it's compounding. And I think having come out of a very difficult 1.5 years, very difficult school year, with the stress of the pandemic, with the losses, with the illness, with the social distancing and the masking, and to think that we would have another year, something along those lines, is extremely distressing. And then the other piece that's also disconcerting is that this new variant seems to be more prevalent among children. One of the, if you'll call it silver lining of the previous variant was that children were usually either mildly affected or not affected at all. There was a problem with that because sometimes they more readily brought it home to others and caused other adults to get sick who got it more virulent cases. But the Delta variant seems to be affecting children as well. So what are some of the emotional considerations? So first of all, when we're assessing our children, first of all, we always have to be concerned about pre-existing conditions and tendencies, and I probably should have said also, and pre-existing strengths. One of the themes we emphasized during this year is that what was will be more so. So any child that's coming into this year with an anxiety disorder, with depression, with one of the dysregulatory disorders, whether it's ADHD or oppositional defiant disorder, if we're facing stress and if we're facing the challenges of another, let's say another case of another variant, then we're going to be, and oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that yet. I'm sorry. Then it's going to be all the more so. So we have to be aware of the vulnerable children. However, the flip side is true as well, that situations like that bring out our strengths in the most. So we're going to see those children that are resilient, those children that are adept at getting the help they need or at managing the stress, which is probably the majority of children. We'll see it, and we'll see them flex their muscles all the more, and we'll be amazed, as we have been this past year, by their ingenuity and capacity to cope. Obviously, of greatest concern is the anxious child, because this is an anxious situation. And we were seeing dramatic increases in anxiety even before the pandemic. And there's a lot of data that suggests that anxiety is even further growing, both among children and adults, sometimes part of the long haul from the coronavirus, because it seems that sometimes the coronavirus seems to affect the central nervous system, causing people who never even had a propensity to anxiety to experience panic attacks and the like. But certainly the child who by nature is anxious will be all the more anxious if they're facing this uncertainty or a resurgence of the illness. The gifted child, we usually think about intellectually gifted child as being a gift and being a blessing, but it's a challenge. And the child who's going to be most inquisitive and the child's going to most look into things and delve into things. Just this afternoon, I was working with a family that had a highly traumatic event occur to them. And the one child that seems to be affected the most is their brightest child. And it's the child who really analyzes and thinks into things. And so therefore we have to be concerned about those children because they're more prone to anxiety. We also have to be concerned about the impulsive and dismissive child, the child who does not like to be made anxious, the child who rejects feeling anxious and is more action oriented, or as I said, dismissive, because those safety precautions that we're going to need and those rules that we're going to have to enforce, they're the ones who are going to be the least cooperative, or as I said, even derisive about those kind of restrictions, et cetera. So those are children for the opposite reason that we have to be concerned about. Then there are going to be a number of children who are coming into the school year where the family has dealt already with the illness or have experienced losses. And these don't go away so fast. In fact, sometimes as the stressor lets up, that's sometimes when the emotions come out. And so the grieving or the ordeal or the worry of the illness, even if it's over, well, the loss obviously is forever, but let's even say the loved one who was sick has recovered. Sometimes it's now when they're back into the routine that the emotional sequelae come out. And then we also have to be concerned about the home. Certainly the younger the child, the more impacted they are by parents, the attitudes, they look towards the parents to sort of be the gauges and the barometers, they're the compass of how they should respond. And therefore, the overly anxious parent or the parent themselves who's dismissive and has and is sardonic about the recommendations for caution and precaution, the children will reflect that. And then one more very important point, and again, I don't want to seem like I'm only focusing on problems, but I think we would not be surprised if children handle all these changes better than we do. Children are a lot more malleable than we are as adults. And if you think about it, how many new challenges, how many new situations a child has to face in the span of their childhood, so much more so than we do as adults, that they are incredibly adept at adjusting to new situations. Sometimes when I get a call from a parent and there's some potential tragedy in the home or hardship, and they're worried about their children, sometimes I say to them, you know what, in 3-4 months from now, you're going to call me back and say, I can't believe my kids. I can't believe how incredibly skillfully they adjusted or saw to it that their needs were met. So we have to respect children's capacity to change and sort of flow with the punches and manage the situations, difficult situations that they have to face. Okay, let's consider some developmental issues just very quickly, because I'm saying I'm almost running out of my time already. The preschool age child, since this is for teachers from K through 12, first of all, their time perception is very different. The summer months for a 4 or 5 year old is an eternity. And those of us, if you don't believe me, try to think back about how long it took for you to get from one birthday to the other. Now you wished you could slow it down. But so therefore, the span of the summer has really created a disconnect maybe for many of these children, and therefore they won't be referencing the previous year as much as older children will. And also they have spent, it could very well be that their entire school career was one with the masks and the hygienic practices and the distancing and the remote learning and the in-person learning. So they don't know much, they don't have anything else really to reference as an alternative. So they may be the easiest group, the most easily adjustable. And also a preschool age child have obedience without need for rationale. They don't need explanations. They're used to adults doing all sorts of nutty things to them and making them adhere to all sorts of senseless rules, et cetera. They take them to doctors and stick needles in their arms. They will do all sorts of strange impositions, and they'll go along with it. So we don't have to explain to the preschool age child as much whatever rules we introduce, whatever changes we make. If the adult makes it, then makes it with a sense of certainty, the child will be okay with that. They express their concerns through play and imagination. So if they are worried or if there is something going on that is of concern, you'll see it in their play. Not uncommonly, a parent of a 5-year-old or something like that will call me and say, I'm worried about my child, I'm not sure if they're having a reaction to this, that, or the other thing. And tell them, listen to their play, listen to their imaginary play, and if it's there, it'll appear in their play. They're also very responsive to voice tones and body language more than words. So if you're giving instructions, or if you're trying to allay anxiety, if you're trying to even promote some more adherence to rules, be aware of the manner and fashion in which you say it, because scared children in particular are listening much more to your voice tone and your body language and the particular words you use. They will sense an adult's precariousness or uncertainty. And if you're not clear yourself, or if the parent is not clear, or if there is, let's say, again, a derisiveness about school rules or something like that, even if it's not expressed, and the parent might say, I never said anything to my child, but they pick up on tones and they pick up on vibes, very much so, because especially to the adults, because they're so dependent upon them. So clarity is the rule, is a very important rule, and they will treat the teacher as a parent. So if there is concern, if something's going, if a parent is sick, or if there's a worry about a family member or something like that, very often the preschool age child will tell the teacher, or will actually turn to the teacher for solace and comfort, and not even necessarily the parent. Sometimes they sense that the parent is too close to the situation, so they will turn to teacher, or sometimes they will treat the teacher as a parent. Many preschool age teachers will report that children refer to them as mommy, daddy, something along those lines. The elementary school age child, the prior year, it has a little bit more of immediacy. At this age, we have to be concerned about the academic lags, because the research is showing that the remote learning was not a resounding success academically. We can go into why, and it's a whole topic unto itself. It seems that the well-endowed children and the children from more, let's say, wealthy homes, et cetera, seem to keep up, but some of the children from the more problematic homes, or from the more from the less economically endowed homes, that there are distinct lags. So we have to be concerned about academic skills that are missing. They're very tuned into their parents, and if a parent has a different position than the school, they'll be championing it. They're fascinated with facts. They want to understand factually what's going on. That's very typical for children this age, and therefore they're susceptible to rumors. Because if matters are not clear, if somebody fills in the ambiguity, even with information that's erroneous, they will find that they'll gravitate that much more readily than others would. They like conventionality, like uniformity. They don't like differences. They don't like kids who don't quite fit in. So they'll want to belong to the larger group, and whatever the norm is for the larger group, that's what they're going to go for. We'll see shortly. That's very different with adolescents. And a teacher with whom they can relate to well, they'll value. And I think this is something that Ms. Solomon's going to talk about even a little bit more in terms of that function of the teacher. Adolescents will gravitate much more toward the peer or subgroups within the peer group. In other words, they're not looking for the class-wide adherence and belonging. They'll look for those very special close friends, or that subgroup called cliques, gangs, etc. And they don't feel a need to be conventional. So if they feel somehow differently in terms of whatever safety precautions or whatever direction school is taking, they will follow that way. They won't feel as much of a compulsion as the younger child will to follow that sort of collective approach. And to boot, they're rebellious, naturally rebellious, and they seek out individuality. And so therefore, sometimes you might, in a very specific way, the teenager may not want to adhere to the norms or the rules of the school just to be different. So you may have some of that as well. The teenager is thinking much more in terms of the future and in terms of implications and what this means universally. And whatever the implications may be about having another episode of this pandemic and the impact it might have on society, or what it means to him and her when they are adults, is something that the adolescent's going to think about much more so than the younger child. And interestingly enough, also adolescents, and there's even some data that suggests this is neurologically based, will take risks. They're impervious to danger. They're not as readily responsive to what's at risk. It's no accident that armies recruit their soldiers when they're still teenagers. perhaps that's part of the reason. And therefore, taking chances and taking risks when there might even be a danger would be more typical for the adolescent. I'm really running out of time, so I'm going to go very quickly. Just some quick core recommendations: be consistent, reference medical sources, validate feelings and worries. Here I would reference the OHEL Resilience Workbook, the COVID-19 Resilience Workbook, which works very much in terms of using some of the methods from mindfulness, et cetera, to help children be in touch with their feelings. Teach students to rely on their strengths and coping mechanisms and use whatever's going on as a teachable moment. How do you face uncertainty? Referencing history, literature, the Bible, art, music, to cope. The role of prayer and spirituality in terms of ascending beyond stressors that face you, or faith as an antidote to that which is unknown. There's countless, and you teachers know this better than I do, opportunities to use the stressors and to educate them, children, in managing and coping with potentially difficult times. Just as an example, and this is from Judaic studies, but I think it's a very good example. Many of us have taught children, or we learned ourselves in Bereshit and Genesis, about when Jacob had to face Esau, his brother Esau, after many years, and when there was much tension between them. And he braced himself to prepare, not having any idea, like we don't in terms of the pandemic, not knowing what we're facing, not knowing if we're facing danger, if we're facing just something passing, if it's going to be a triumphant year, facing the uncertainty that we're facing. And Rashi, right there, citing, I believe it was the Medrash, says, he prepared himself for three things: presence, prayer, and war. In fact, what Jacob did was he covered every eventuality. He foisted upon the uncertainty a potential solution for whatever he may have to face. And this is a wonderful opportunity. And again, this is just an example. If you are Judaic studies teaching, you're teaching this to say, that's what we're doing today. We don't know what's going to be with the pandemic. We don't know what's going to be with the Delta variant, the Lambda variant. We don't know what's facing us. We're bracing ourselves and preparing ourselves for every eventuality. So there isn't one clear solution, but we have a number, and we'll know what to do, however this eventually turns out. This is an example of how you can integrate, I believe, some of the lessons in terms of coping from your curriculum. Okay, again, I'm available for questions at a later point. At this point, I'm excited to hear what Ethel Solomon has to say from a teacher's perspective, and I'm going to hand the podium over to her.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Blumenthal. And I want to thank you, Rabbi Liebtag, very much for inviting Hidden Sparks to join, allow me to join with you this evening for this very important discussion. I'm really excited to be part of the Hidden Sparks Parent Education Center, where we're doing counseling and workshops for the yeshiva community in the boroughs right now. And if you're interested in finding out more, my email address at the center is going to be on the first slide. So feel free to contact me. You'll receive a copy of the slides after this evening, so you'll be able to access the contents if you're interested. Okay, so I'm just going to try to pull up the PowerPoint. There we go. Okay. Alrighty. So, as you can imagine, this conversation that we're having is not what we expected to be having in the fall of 2020. As we gear up to go back to school, there's only one thing that I know for certain. The students have had a very difficult year last year. And while there's no doubt that there's been learning loss, the result of that loss has been the loss of their emotional and mental health. Teachers also, you've suffered also with a lot of anxiety, getting overwhelmed with that chronic unpredictability that we had to face last year. But schools are our stabilizing force. So we have to be very intentional in cultivating that culture that we're looking for to mitigate those feelings of isolation and loss and loneliness. So what does that mean for the coming year? How do we prioritize? What is the most important thing for us to do as the school year begins? So students are going to come back to the classroom with their brand new backpacks and their new clothes. And they're also going to come with that uncertain stress that comes with this pandemic experience we're having right now. So included here, I'm going to be talking about some strategies that you can use to support your students in setting goals, approaching challenges with some flexibility and optimism, helping them believe in their abilities and managing their emotions to strengthen the overall learning experience. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is setting the tone, which for the first few days of school is the most important thing that you do that will help you in setting up the culture for your students for the remainder of the year. We're also going to be talking about activities that you can use to really get to know your students better. And we'll be talking about how you set goals up for students to help them be their best selves. You know, children are coming into a new year after navigating this pandemic, and we're going to ready ourselves now for what's going to unfold in a very short time. You know, children have always come to school at the start of the year with butterflies, worries about the transition and what are the expectations. When you'll be going into your classroom this year, and I think Dr. Blumenthal spoke about some of the things that could happen, you might be noticing that some students will find themselves confused or worried. So what are we going to be looking for? What are we going to be observing? What might you notice in the classroom? You might see kids that'll have difficulty concentrating, difficulty with memory. You might see somatic issues like stomach aches and headaches. Maybe they'll be irritable or anxious, or perhaps even get physical. Some kids may fall asleep in class because they're not sleeping at home. You might see them not eating. You might have children that are having difficulty with regulating their emotions, maybe weepy, crying, sad, maybe withdrawn and not engaging with the content, with you, with the classmates. You may see students that, you know, may speak in a baby voice, display behaviors like a younger child. You may see them avoiding participating in activities, participating in gym or recess, in general, avoiding communication. Or you may see kids that just seem to be dragging themselves around with a constant sense of fatigue. So we're thinking, what can I do differently? How can I structure my instruction so that I can support every child? Because they all need the benefit of providing physical and psychological safety, building trust, empowerment, and giving them voice and choice. How do we recognize each student and give them an opportunity to use their voices, express their needs, and feel heard? Well, reflection is the best way to provide a fresh perspective on connecting what we've already learned to new goals. And it's also critical to the learning process, because knowing what you know and what you don't know yet helps you be able to set goals and helps the students set goals for themselves. It sparks interest in meeting them, it promotes engagement, and those are the precursors for learning. So I have some activities I just want to share with you. You might try in the classroom. This one is an elementary, probably could be used for preschool also. And you might be familiar with this, called the Glow and Grow. And basically It is being able to state one thing that they're very proud of in terms of their learning, and then one thing that they'd like to do in the future. It's a really good way to have conversation about how you're doing, and also to kind of project in the future what kind of things you'll be able to do and how you'll do with them. Another one that's similar to this, also for preschool and elementary, is using certain language to describe how things went. So a rose is really something that you loved doing that day, and your bud is something you're looking forward to for tomorrow. And the thorn is maybe something that didn't work out the way you wanted it to, or perhaps it didn't, it just didn't make you happy. One for middle school and high school. This particular one's called Reflect and Sketch, where you may want to ask them to prepare a piece of artwork with some guiding questions to kind of deliver a reflection that might be inspiring for them, but without necessarily using language. Another option for middle school students, which is really nice, is something called the goal setting one pager. And this can be done in a variety of ways, where basically you have a goal word that is identified as something that a student wants to work on or build. And the student then can develop a graphic along with the words to describe how they're going to embed that particular word into what they're doing over the course of the year. So this one, this sample here, the person used the word happiness as their word, and did something with an online piece. And it can be done also even on a piece of paper with a graphic organizer the same way, and you'll get the same effect. And I have another sample here where this person really was inspired by her father to write how she was going to try to build her determination. It's very specific, but also personal. This activity is called a level of reflection. These cards can be prepared, or you could use it as a classroom poster as a guide for reflections in class, which is a great thing to use at the beginning of the school year, but also it could be used at the end of a unit, a certain subject of discussion. You can definitely really find a way to incorporate Bloom's taxonomy, where the questions here are, as you get deeper with the questions, you are able to get more information about the depth of their thought. And the last question that they're asked, it's something that they can share out what they've discovered as a learner. And it's a good way to build community and also learn from each other. So I mentioned before that setting the tone is crucial to establish a solid rapport with your students at the start of the year. So, you want to encourage and model a positive, kind behavior. You want to introduce procedures and with expectations and goals in a friendly manner. And you also want to create an atmosphere that supports every student with empathy, and you're modeling resilience. So one of the things that I think is a great idea to do and very easy to implement for a teacher is sending a letter home to the parents called the Million Words or Less survey. And basically you're asking parents what it is that you need to know about their child. And it's kind of like a tongue-in-cheek word limit as the only restriction. You may actually have parents that will write 1 million words, but it really just gives them an opportunity to share what they think you should know about their child, how they might be feeling, what they're interested in, what their attitude is. And very often parents appreciate having that opportunity. The next thing is, I know school's right around the corner, so I don't know how much time it is for these next two, but if you haven't done it yet, I certainly would encourage you to take the time, if you have it, to give a call, or perhaps even send an email if you don't have time, or prepare a short little video clip, 2 minutes, just introducing yourself, sharing your story, why you're teaching, what you hope to get from the year. And it's very powerful to give this to parents before the year starts, in terms of setting a tone for the relationship that you're going to continue with regarding their child for the year. And the last one is kind of a virtual meet and greet. If you have the ability to set up, 2 minutes or 5 minutes with a family, just to say hello, I look forward to seeing you in school next week. I just wanted to meet you personally and tell you that I'm looking forward to seeing you. It's a wonderful way and very powerful also to introduce yourself to the family. Now this next page is at the top is really for the student. For some kids, they really need a gestalt of where they're going and what they're going to be seeing. And being able to write a little letter with a picture of yourself and a picture of the classroom really helps a child be able to know that when he gets to school, he's going to see a familiar face. He's going to have a context for the classroom, and it really can reduce anxiety by having that. Now this next one, the greeting at the door, is really a very powerful and simple thing to do. And you wouldn't expect this, but a study that was just published last year showed that greeting students at any age, meaning little, tall, big, small, that it would set a positive tone for the rest of the day for those students. And in fact, one of the studies that was done showed that there was an improvement in academic achievement of 20%, and disruptive behaviors reduced by 9%, and adding almost an hour of engagement, which is really tough to do sometimes, especially as the day goes on in the afternoon, to almost an hour more engagement a day. So it's very powerful. So greeting the students at the door, meeting them at their eye level. If they're little, you might want to bend down. If they're bigger than you, like with me, I had to do a lot of looking up. But have open body language and posture, be smiling, have a calm presence, and project enthusiasm. And, this will really, provide a sense of emotional and physical safety for the kids. Let's go on. I want to talk a little bit about restorative circles, or magic circles, I call them, and I call them magic because they do tricks. They really promote, the goal is to promote discussions and respectful, reflective listening. And why a circle? Because when you're sitting in a circle, it really is removing any concept of authority, and physically you're facing someone, so there's no barriers, so everyone is together with no barrier. It builds community, and it also responds to harms through dialogue. I had a specific teacher that was a wonderful teacher who really struggled with her kids coming in after recess and settling down to do work. And this is a 5th grade class. And so some of you may be familiar with this. And there was always arguments, and took a long time for them to settle down. And so she decided to do a magic circle upon the return from recess every day. And it really did do magic, because it transformed the arguments into very healthy discussions about how kids feel and how kids want to be treated. And they were able to do it in a respectful way and in a public way. And they modeled for each other a better way to be, and really started turning those magic circles that started out of a problem or a challenge into one of love. They looked forward to having the circles. They asked to have circles, and they found it to be a place that was safe to be able to share. So for preschool, there is something called Pass the Drum, which is a great idea, where children are basically given a drum at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day. And they're asked to share their own rhythmic beat of how they're feeling. So it could be that it could be a very, very soft and slow beat, a fast beat, a chaotic beat, a smooth, coherent beat. But whatever beat the child or the children would do, the teacher would then basically have a discussion about the patterns and what they mean and how they can feel and how they might, what they might do to feel better or different. So it was a wonderful segue for young children to be able to connect to their feelings. For middle and high school and elementary school, the circle is either in a rug or in chairs, but basically it does the same thing. It's something that offers encouragement, builds bonds of commonality, and it could be fun. It could be, something where they could tackle topics together, debate issues, and it can be healing because if there are issues, they have a place where they can do it that's safe for them. Okay. All righty. So in getting to know your students, when you're working with kindergartners or you're working with high schoolers, it's the same feelings get triggered at the start of school. Am I going to like my teacher? Where are my classes going to be? Will I know anybody? Is everybody going to like me? That it's a common theme no matter what your age. So I have some activities that might really be fun for the first couple of days of school. And for elementary school, I have the brown paper bag challenge, which kids love because it really is very personalized, where they were basically given a brown paper bag and asked to take it home, fill it with 4 items, and be prepared to talk about these important things when they come to school that represent who they are. And the next one is my personal favorite, which is a get to know you cootie catcher. And if you can remember those days where you had these little folded pieces of paper that you opened up and they had little questions inside of them, you basically prepare something like this. And there's a sample on the page there. And you can read the questions aloud, or you can have kids pair up and ask each other questions. And it's a great way for kids to get to know each other. This back to school time capsule is also something that I really like, which is, you just use like a Pringles container and you print questionnaires about basically the kids' hopes for the year and things that they expect to happen. And I would even take a little picture of them and maybe put it into the capsule. And then after they've filled it out, you put it away. And at the end of the year, you have a celebration for all the learning that's been done. And they get to take out their hopes and dreams from the beginning of the year to see how it matched up. So it's a wonderful, wonderful activity. For middle school, I have a few ideas. One of them, the first one's very simple. It's called Have You Ever or Stand Up If. And this is actually good for all age kids too, where the teacher prepares a list of questions and the students, if the answer is yes, the questions are yes or no questions. If the answer is yes, the students stand up. So the kids get to see what they have in common by standing up. So the questions could be, something like, do you have a brother? To do you like pizza? To what's your favorite, is your favorite color blue? But it builds a sense of community. The quotes game is a little bit of a fast-paced game where you would prepare a set of quotes a little bit more than the number of students you have in the classroom, put them on strips of paper in the middle of the class, and then send the kids up to pick out a quote, find a partner, and they have to read the quote and connect how it relates to them with their partner. They only have about 60 seconds, and then they have to go put it back and then change partners and do it again. So you can do about 4 cycles. And the kids really do get a sense of each other from the activity, as long as it's moving fast. You could do things like get to know you surveys, writing prompts. And the last thing is a life map. And it's also a very nice thing to do because it really has a creative piece where kids can really think about their life story, and then they can share it out with the class after they've finished it. One of the other things that is very important to do is, always checking in on the kids to see how they're doing. This particular activity for preschool and elementary is a really wonderful activity. Basically using a metaphor to describe how you're feeling that day through a weather description. I saw a fourth grade teacher, I had a fourth grade teacher who did this as part of her routine every day. She would start off the day, talking about what's the weather like outside and what's everybody's internal weather like. So they could say, well, my weather is feeling very sunny today, but I think it might be cloudy tomorrow because I have a test I have to study for. And the kids really liked it because it was almost like a conversational code where they could talk about their feelings without really talking about their feelings in a way that might embarrass them. So it became a very fun activity for them to engage in. So it's a wonderful thing to try. Really, really encourage you to try that with your kids. For older kids, high school kids, middle school kids, this is the time, like Dr. Blumenthal mentioned before, where, they probably need check-ins as much, if not more often than the younger students, because right now they're moving through this heightened simultaneous pruning and growing of these neurons and these synaptic connections, and it's making them more emotional, and they really benefit from just getting a quick check-in to kind of gauge their own thermostat about how they're doing. So here, the one that I have is a simple poster that a teacher put up by the door. She had a set of Post-its by the door, and when the students come in, they have to check in before they go to their seats. They write their name on the back of the Post-it. So you're not seeing the name on the front, but the kids then post the Post-it in the area where they're feeling. So it gives the teacher a quick visual about how the class is looking overall, and gives her a good gauge of what she needs to do or he needs to do with them. And this last area that I want to talk to you about is called thinking positively, which for me is probably the most important part of life. To start and end each day with an expression of gratitude, something that you and your students can share, something or someone that you're thankful for, and sharing something enjoyable. I had a teacher once a middle school teacher who started her class, and this was also part of her routine. Tell me what you're grateful for. She would go around the classroom. She would say what she was grateful for, and then they would just go right into the lesson. And it really elevated the whole instructional period, because there was just this sense of appreciation for being there together. We do know that that gratitude really has a very powerful impact on your life, because it engages you in this virtuous cycle that once you start seeing things to be grateful for, your brain starts looking for other things to be grateful for. So it really does shift your mindset. The 2-minute gratitude journal is really nice, just to at the start of the day, to just say, or maybe even once a week, but to be able to just think about what you're grateful for. This is one model, but certainly doesn't have to be this model. I will let go of this. I am grateful for that, and I'm going to focus on this. And when you do this at the start of the day, it really does set kind of an intention of how you want to get through your day. And so it definitely puts you on the right track for a positive mindset. The other thing that I really like, and maybe it's just me, but I felt I needed to share it, is I love dad jokes. So, I think having kids be able to offer or share a joke or be the joke man of the week or the joke person of the week really is something that just kind of builds a community in a positive way. And these are a couple of silly jokes that I liked. And lastly, I really felt that an affirmation is something that really helps keep you grounded. You might just be saying to yourself, I can only do my best, or I know I can do this. I have my son, actually, we had this a while back. I guess I must have expressed some stress about something, imagine that. And he said, Mom, I got you. You got this. And I said to myself, you know what? I do got this. I do got this. So I really, even now, still incorporate that phrase when things get challenging for me. And I take a deep breath, and it really helps. You can write it and post it on your desk, on your refrigerator, wherever it is that you feel, that stress point might come, just to remind you of what's important. So, I know teaching is a job that's filled with joy, excitement, curiosity, love, and a lot of stress. But if you start each day with a focused intention and you take everything one step at a time, and you're present, when a challenge comes up and you're tensing up, you stop, you close your eyes, you take a few deep breaths, and then you take a moment to recenter, refocus. It can make all the difference. And while times right now feel a little bit challenging and sometimes overwhelming, it's comforting to know that you have already used some tried and true teaching strategies that are going to support you through it. So I encourage you to give yourself tons of love, patience. You're going to have high moments. There'll be some lows, there'll be some twists and turns. But teachers are creative, and they're resilient, and they're adaptive, and they're strong. So you will meet this moment just as you have so many other times in the past. So my message to you is simple. You got this. I just want to thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. And I look forward to being able to speak with some of you at another time and answer any questions that you might have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Blumenthal. Thank you, Mrs. Solomon. We have a few questions that we can entertain in the short time that we have left. One of the questions that came in is, this is both a school administrator question, perhaps a psychological question as well. Teachers are saying that some of the kids are coming back with an option of wearing, where the kids have an option of wearing masks or not. Teacher wants to know, how do we deal with the possibility of kids teasing each other or pointing out the kids wearing masks versus non-masks? Any thoughts?
Who goes first?
Good, you go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not going to address it as a teacher. I have no experience as a teacher, and as a student, I was the kind of one student who the teacher wanted to forget. But the question's an excellent one, and I think it has some bearing on the age. I think, as I alluded to, the elementary school age child wants much more conventionality. They want everybody the same. The adolescent has much more tolerance for differences and for individuality. So I would venture to guess that having some children wearing masks and some children not would probably be a bigger issue in an elementary school age classroom than it would be in that among, let's say, middle school or high school. I also think it makes a very big difference if it's, let's say, a majority and minority versus let's say just one or two kids in the class, because then you're allowed, it creates a greater susceptibility to singling out that child. And the child or the small group of children that are masking could become representative to the other children's the perception of danger. that's something they may not want to face. They may want to not know. So they might be ostracism, or they might be picking on those children, not even so much because they're just different, but they're becoming a very stark reminder that there's a danger out there. And many of the kids may not want to see that, and therefore they'll be rejecting. I think it really much hinges on the teacher, and if situations like this occur. And I think, again, Ms. Solomon can probably talk better pragmatically how to do it, maybe a magic circle or something along those lines. But how to give over the message that we're different. We have different susceptibilities, we have different outlooks, and that's okay. It doesn't have to lead to rejection. I think the teacher can set that tone. If there is, let's say there is scapegoating, or if there is a cluster of children that are being marginalized because they are, let's say, listening to their parents and want to take greater precautions and allow the and have the children wear the masks, then maybe, I'm guessing, and again, this would be a good point probably to hand it over to Solomon, but I'm guessing if the teacher does more class-wide activities or engages the class as a whole and takes on challenges or tasks that requires cooperation between all the children, he or she could sort of minimize that occasion. But I'm going to hand it over now to Solomon to talk about it as a teacher.
So I appreciate very much what you shared, Dr. Blumenthal, about looking at different ages differently in terms of what the reactions might be of the students towards each other. Just as a pragmatic issue, I believe that all students are going to be required to wear masks for now. So for me, the question really would be, is the teacher modeling what the expectation is, and giving gentle guidance about what needs to happen without making it an issue of fear or defiance when a child doesn't, and certainly to talk about the challenges of having to wear a mask and the discomfort, and validating the concerns that students might have regarding those feelings. Really, like you said, a magic circle actually would be a great place to have that conversation. Because it is an ongoing challenge, and I definitely saw that in the past year, where the children really did struggle, more or less, depending upon the message that they got. And for older students, the issue really was a question more of kids being able to assert their independence in decision making, and being able to make choices that they were satisfied with. So it's definitely it's a wonderful question, and it is an ongoing challenge. I think it's one of the top questions that parents are asking about. So thank you for that.
Thank you both. Another question that both has psychological and educational overtones. The question is, how would you address the parents who has a great deal of anxiety about academic success?
Yeah. Well, you go first this time. That's a good idea.
Okay. So, I don't know if there's one parent who's cornered the market on anxiety regarding their children's academic performance. I would say that, all parents, and speaking as a parent and a grandparent, we all look at our children and want the best for them, and hope that they're getting the best, and hope that they're having the best learning experiences. So I think the best way to support a parent who is having concerns or questions is to really start with communicating on a regular basis with the parent before little questions in their minds turn into big questions. To have some regular communication, almost like a checkup phone call, to communicate with a parent about how things are going, because then you have these little opportunities to kind of reflect on things that you're noticing in the classroom, and being able to share it as an observation, not good, not bad, but an observation of how the child is actually performing. And if there are any recommendations or suggestions You know, you can say things that you're doing in the classroom to help accelerate the child's performance if it's needed, or if it's something to help really frame things better for a parent in terms of their understanding, to really put it in observational terms, things that you notice, what is working and how it's working, and that you can keep monitoring it together. But I think the underlying current is keeping that line of communication open, because you know, for some parents, no news from a teacher is good news. For other parents, no news is like the nightmare in their head that is not real. So, you know, making it real, making it concrete, making it observable is not really something to have an argument about, but it's just something to state as a matter of fact. And if something needs to change based on that observation, then you can look to find ways to make adjustments based on that. That would be my answer.
I don't have much to add to that. I think I agree that rapport with the parent is so important, especially today. You know, we sometimes talk facetiously about the helicopter parent. Why do we have helicopter parents today? Other parents didn't have love and concern for the children, but we have the technology. We have the wherewithal to be on top of, you know, you can be in Hong Kong and you can know, to open and close the drapes of your house in New Jersey. So we have this capacity to observe and be on top of so much all the time with cameras and the internet. So then there's the expectation that the parent is going to know constantly what's going on with the child as well. So the report today is all the more important. I know that many moons ago, when I was a psychologist in a school, if I had to meet with a parent and somehow or another, the expectation of the parent did not coincide with our perception of what's going on with the child in the school, I would not try to have a confrontation with the parent. I would sit down with the parent and say, look, we have different perspectives. We both, nobody loves your child more than you do. Nobody knows your child better than you do. I have the benefit of objectivity. We're not going to end this process until we agree. And if, let's say we had an hour meeting, and if at the end of the hour, we're not seeing eye to eye, we're going to have another meeting. Until we'll have 20 meetings until we agree. Now, I had the luxury of doing this as being a psychologist, and I think that speaks to one more important point in terms of helping difficult children in the school is use your ancillary services. There were times when I would meet with a teacher and I'd say to the teacher, you know as well as I do what about this, you understand this child better even than I do, and you're probably even in a better position than I am to impart to this parent what you want to say. But let's say the parent gives you a hard time. If I'm the one doing it as a psychologist, so there's one more person out there who hates me. I don't have to live with the kid. I don't have to educate the kid the rest of the year. You need to preserve that relationship with the parents. So let me be what they say in Latin is called the Schlechter. At least my mother told me that was Latin. But let me be the bad guy. Let me be the one who's going to deal with difficult situations. So it's not a slight to the teacher if you use school social worker, school psychologist, the assistant principal, whoever it may be, to deal with a parent who may have expectations that are unrealistic about their child.
Okay, thank you. We have time probably for two more questions.
Sure.
This one was sent in. Teacher, who summarized the question. The teacher had dealt with a lot of negativity amongst especially her colleagues in the so-called teacher's lounge, and wanted to know, is there anything I could do using my position as a colleague to keep the positivity levels up this year, especially since it looks like we're headed for yet another year of uncertainty. What could she do?
Okay, because it's my turn to go first. Okay. When someone takes, this is what we're seeing a lot now, especially with some of the rifts we're seeing in the community, but if somebody's emotionally invested in taking a certain position, there's one way to make sure they'll even be more invested, that's to disagree with them. Because when I often tell people the heart is stronger than the brain. And if people have an emotional investment in a particular position, if you try to rationally dissuade them, you're just sort of further entrenching them in that position. So usually the best way to ameliorate or change or alter a position is to not directly confront, but sort of sneak in through the back door. And I think a comment that I might make if I was sitting in that teacher's lounge, and I always remember the school where I worked, they had a cartoon in the teacher's lounge. It showed two students walk into a room, and there was, saunas and people getting massages and palm trees. And he said, I always wonder what the teacher's lounge looked like. But if there is that negativity, I think just, saying, you're right, but you know what else is amazing? Look at how well we did. Look at some of the creative, imaginative things. I have to tell you personally, and I've mentioned this in previous webinars. There are many aspects of what we witnessed this past year and a half on the part of teachers and parents and kids that has really restored my faith in humankind. The creativity, the humor, the ability to adapt has been pretty incredible. So I think instead of saying, confronting them about the negativity, just raise the positivity, raise the resilience. People ask me sometimes how I can work with tragedy and loss so much. And one of the answers I give them is I don't just see tragedy and loss. I see incredible care. I see charity, and I see love and strength. So it balances it. Maybe infuse that into the conversation. I'll hand it over to Salma if she wants to add anything.
Well, that's actually very well said. And, I definitely would concur that finding ways to look for the positive is the best way to address it. I find sometimes, and I've been in a lot of faculty rooms, and I've seen the nature of what happens with the dynamic shifts to this negative point of view, and it can really weigh you down and anchor you down. And I would just encourage anyone who encounters this to really follow Dr. Blumenthal's advice to be able to counter it with something positive. And then really, I would gravitate towards the people that are not like that, because you don't want that weight on you. And that definitely can pervade in a teacher's lounge, an unfiltered environment for all kinds of a conversation. And I wouldn't engage in those conversations. So I would really look to raise up the conversation. And there may be people that it seems like it's a lot, but usually it's emanating from a single source or a couple of people and kind of ripples out. You can find the people that are not in that ripple and find them as people that will raise you up. You'll raise each other up, and I think that that's a much healthier type of engagement. And the people you work with, they say it's like your family. Like you can't choose them. They're who are there. So you want to really make the most out of the environment that you're in, and be a positive force for the environment, and whatever that means, and however you can do that, it's going to make your life better. You're not going to change people, and trying to align with people that are like-minded are going to make you a lot happier in the long run. So that's what I would share.
Great. Thank you both. Last question must have come from a parent, but I think the question is relevant to teachers as well. My son is 9 with severe ADHD, which already makes school difficult at times. He has been remote for 19 months and going back next week. He already has issues with anxiety and being in groups of kids. How can I make this easier for him going back?
Okay, go ahead. I'll
okay.
follow up. Yeah.
Okay, so I think Dr. Blumenthal spoke about it earlier, just that kids that had struggles before they had to deal with COVID. For some students, particularly ones with attentional challenges, the idea of being at home was somehow a relief for some of the students, and coming back into the classroom it's almost reintegrating that stressful situation that perhaps he felt before. So I think that the support services that are available for him, is something that you should be looking at in terms of what specifically he might need to help him. I don't know the specifics of his case, but for some students with attentional problems, it looks very different based on what they're presenting with. So I would say that it's something you may want to share with the social worker that might be in the school. They may have some suggestions for what you could do. And if it's something that I can be helpful with, if you want to get in touch with me outside of this meeting, I'd be happy to speak with you as well.
Yeah, that's probably a question that could take up an entire hour conversation as well. So I'm going to just throw out a few pointers. First of all, I often say to parents, there's a myth out there that all children are equally easy to raise, and it's just not the case. You have some kids, you just wind them up and they just produce nachas. That's all they can do. And then you have other children that give you gray hairs and wrinkles. If you use, and in my case, even helped get rid of my hair. But that's just the reality. The other thing that I think, maybe just to give this parent a little bit more hope, because it's going to be, if you're anxious and you're worried about your child fitting in, he's going to pick up on that, and could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let me impart just some reasons. I'm going to give you 3 reasons to be a little bit more hopeful. First of all, as the child gets older, I don't know the age of this child, but as you get closer to adolescence, as I mentioned earlier, there's much more tolerance and acceptance for kids who are different. And the other thing that happens is, one of the benefits of high school is that it's a much larger student body from a wider range of area, and the kids who aren't exactly mainstream for whatever reason, they find their niche much more sometimes in high school than they would in elementary school. The other thing is, by the way, there's a body of literature out there that suggests that kids with ADHD or the kids with attentional problems are often more creative and imaginative. They're used to not fitting in. They're used to not being conventional, and that when given the opportunity, they can be very imaginative and creative. And it's no accident that a lot of these kids, if we get them out of school with their self-esteem intact, sometimes the CEOs and the highly successful business people, or even school administrators. So it's or psychologists for that matter. But at any rate, so there's a silver lining to ADHD, and that energy that makes it so hard for them to sit in the seat, once they're out there in the world, can be definitely an asset. So sometimes it's really just keeping their self-esteem intact and getting them out of school. The other thing that I want to mention, I think that might be actually a good tone to sort of maybe conclude this workshop. This is my own, call it anticipation or hope, but I think that, again, look for silver linings from the COVID or from the pandemic that we've been through. I think the reliance on remote learning, even though it was not very successful, but we hadn't quite mastered it yet. But one of the benefits might be is infusing more technology into the classroom. And why I think that's going to be important is that, again, I don't know how teachers do it. You stand in front of 30 kids with 30 different needs, and you got to somehow address all of them. And it's very hard to tailor your instruction to the kid who can sit for hours focusing, and the kid who can't sit for 2 minutes, to the kid who's a visual learner, to the kid who's an auditory learner, to the kid who's gifted, to the kid who's cognitively challenged. How do you address them all standing in front of a classroom? But if you rely more on technology can diagnose the child, can tailor the instruction to the specific child, and give immediate feedback to the teacher and to the administration. And I think that as we introduce both remote learning and learning via computers into our educational system, we'll be able to address those kids who, for whatever host of reasons that are not their fault and certainly not their parents' fault, are not an easy fit in the structured classroom that governs education for all over the world and for generations. So I think there's hope, and I urge you to. I know the child can be challenging, but go in optimistic as well, and go in hopeful as well, because the child will read that, and that'll have some bearing on the year that they have.
We want to thank Dr. Blumenthal and Mrs.
Yes.
Solomon
Mhm.
for your
My pleasure.
uplifting words, for your wonderful presentations, and for your practical suggestions. For all the educators that are on this call, I want to wish you all a successful year, a Shana Tova, and good luck in the year to come. Have a good night. Sleep
Good
well.
night.
Get
Thank
ready
you.
for the next the school year. everybody.
Gird your loins.
You all have a good night. Remember to
Okay.
fill out the survey.
I'm gonna. Shana Tov, everybody.
Shana Tova.